In today's video, we're going to be fitting full float hubs to our rear Vitara diff. Now, I know in a previous video I said I wasn't going to do that yet, but the way I want to run my shocker brackets and the coil brackets, it's just going to be too hard to do it down the track. Like, as you can see, the 80 series bracket, for this is the shock bracket that I cut off. If that was on the original Hilux end here, it's just, there's going to be no room to work with it later. It's just going to become way too hard, and I'll end up doing double the amount of work, because obviously I have to cut the old brackets off that I weld on, and etc, etc. So we're going to be doing it now. We managed to get the housing in the coal saw. As you saw, it was a pain, but we had to run shims down the side because the housing stepped here. But we managed to cut it. The ends will be pretty true. They're not going to be spot on, because we tried to, as you saw, we had our angle finder in there trying to get it as spot on as we can, but that's not so critical. What we're going to be doing to fit the hubs is, Dad's going to machine up a sleeve for me, so it'll sleeve in here 50mm, and then it's going to have a step out to the diameter of this. So when I say the diameter of this is, we're going to put this in the lathe, machine off this original housing or tube from the 80 series diff. And if you see in there, you can see the original, that's the original machining that they would have sleeved this tube over and then done their final weld on the outside. So that's what our sleeve's going to do. So it'll go internal of this tube and external of this tube. So the most critical thing with doing something like this is getting it to run true with the diff and with our axles, because there's a flange on the end. If they don't sit true, it's going to try and it'll just end up binding up and, yeah, cause you all sorts of trouble. So we're going to be doing, it's going to be a lot of work to get this all running right, but at least it'll be exactly how I want to do. All our brackets are done, and to move on to the next step of our shockers and actually finishing it off, we've got to sort of do this first. So, all right, let's get stuck into it. Degree. To be happy with that. What? 88. I don't know. 87. That's right. Oh, by this tape, they're both 87. There you go. There you go. Okay, we've got the center in, and now you can sort of see how much clearance we can gain. Now, obviously, I don't want to go too close to the crown wheel. I'm just going to put a 6mm plate in. I'm going to grind this lip off here, and that's where our 6mm plate will go from there. So we're going to gain a fair bit of clearance, and we're still going to have about 8mm of clearance between the crown wheel and our plate that we're going to put in. We got that all cleaned up, which come up real nice. Overall, we gained around 16 to 17mm. So that's a rough estimate because I didn't take a before measurement before I cut it all up. So it's roughly around ½ an inch, which is a big difference when it comes to diff clearance. So, and now we need to put our bung back in. Now, this one is a little bit damaged. I have got the 80 series housing in the back. I might actually quickly go look at that, and we might cut that off and weld that back in. The problem with the magnet being all up here is if something catastrophic happens in the diff, especially because we're going to be running lockers in here, like you chill gear up or something, the magnet's way up here, and all your debris needs to come right up here to catch it before it keeps going through the diff. Generally, obviously, if you break a diff gear or you hurt the rear end in somehow, you're going to feel it in the car, but sometimes you don't. Now, that's generally why car manufacturers put the bung right near where the crown wheel is, so any material that comes off, the magnet catches straight away. So ideally, I want to put it as far down as possible without upsetting my diff clearance, because if we rotate our diff up, it's going to have to be up here somewhere, I think. Yeah, it's going to have to be probably around there. And there's our finished result. I stepped that part there just to leave room for our weld. So what we can do now is drill our hole, sit it in, and we can weld it in. That burnt in quite nicely actually. Come up nice and good. I'm happy, a bit happy about that. It's not all dinted up and wrecked, even though it's going to get dinted up and wrecked. But if I'm going to the effort of shaving and all that, I wanted it to look good. But for now anyway. But that's the shave side of things all done. So what we can do now is put all our brakes, discs, everything that's going to be on that may potentially be in the way of our brackets, put the diff back in the car, and then we can literally start doing our coil brackets. And once that's all done, that's virtually the bulk of the work done. So I've still got to put a big truss on the back of this. I've still got to reinforce all the back of our mounts here because at the moment there's nothing there, but I didn't want to do that and tool all our bracketry's on, because I want to tie it all into everything. Now that it's all together, it does look pretty big and chunky, especially with that full float hub in there. But now brake lines, will use the existing one on the backing plate here, and I'll make up a new one that'll just go along the back truss, probably about to where the center is here, and then it'll go back up to the factory Vitara brake line. So nice and simple, which is good. Well, there we go. Rear diff is all in, ready for mock-up. Full float hubs are on. Super stoked with how that all come out. Now the width we made the same as the front, so we got 1440 of overall hub to hub width in the front. So I actually needed that to clear the inside of the body here. So in the next video, we're going to be tackling all the coil springs. We're going to have to cut out the original factory ones, and it's all going to be moved and changed, and yes, on to the next stage. Once those are on and the whole car's sitting on its own weight, it's all the little bibs and bobs then. Now what I haven't shown is in the front, I ended up changing all the front suspension. As you can see, we got the front patrol arms in the front and my own arms. I ended up bracing all the front diff up. We got our knuckle gussets in the bottom there. It is very dark, so it's hard to see, but and the reason I changed the front, because I had the Land Rover arms in the front. I really did like the bushes in the top. They're like a cone style rubber bush, and they had heaps of super flex with very little resistance. But the problem was here, where to get the housing out. This bushing is around 60. I can't remember the measurements off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure this was around 60 mil or 58 mil in width, and the Land Rover bush was about 75 mil. So because that is so fat there, being panhard front end, when it goes up fully flexed, it was getting so close to the chassis rail the other side. Or for example, it was near enough, it was only a couple of mil away from the chassis rail, and if it gets a hard hit to one side when it's at full bump, it would have definitely hit the chassis, and I just didn't want that. And the other issue I had is when it was fully dropped out, so the whole axle would be towards the camera now. When you pick this front wheel up, it was just nicking the side of the chassis rail too. Now, there's nothing I can do about that. The way I've set the panhard up here with the sump, because the sump, if you eye off, again, it's real dark, but you eye off the bolt hole of the panhard, the sump is right there. And I lifted the motor up as high as I could go, because again, we had to fit our strut brace for the coil towers. So everything is just super, super tight. But by shaving, it was over 10 mil off on the width of that. Now we got heaps of clearance. I actually narrowed in these arms even more, so to get this center out. It is very tight, but it all clears, and I'm much happier now, and I'm not going to worry about it hitting the chassis rail or anything like that. Now, another thing I could do is just nick off the corner of the chassis rail. Like this section right here, there's no load on this. Like if I was to cut that out, there'd be no load on that. But seeing as I want to get that engineered in Australia here, they'd be having a frizzle if I was to cut the chassis rail like that. Well, the guy I sort of spoke to, yeah, he didn't like that idea very much. So that's sort of the update with the front. And under the car, it's pretty much like the back. Again, it's so dark, but it's getting on in the night, so we're losing sun. But how the back is, so it all kind of matches now, which looks good. But we had to redo all our center gearbox mount and everything. But the way it is now, I couldn't be happier with how it's set up. So, but that's going to do it for this video. We got a lot done, so thanks for watching.